Just wanted to greet you all warmly to this occasion, which is a book launch of the English translation of the glossary on the economy of Francesco. And I'm speaking from the Portuguese Catholic University in Lisbon. And I'm speaking also in name of the publishing house who has been responsible for this English edition and also for the Portuguese edition of this glossary. And we are very glad and proud that we were able to collaborate this way in this wonderful project of setting up the glossary to be read and understood and received by many people. Let me just say a few words on how this came to happen, and we will certainly then learn more about all the background and all the motivation that gave rise to this publication and to the movement as such. But the moment for us in which we launched the book was a very important moment for Portugal and for the world, because it was on the occasion of the World Youth Day taking place in Lisbon last summer, and when the Pope came to Portugal and also visited our university exactly a day before we had the book launch in the Portuguese version, opening up the debate of the economy of Francesco for the Portuguese-speaking people. And now we decided to also broaden it to the English-speaking world. As you might have seen, the book is available as a book, but also as an e-book, so that you can easily access it also from abroad. This is for us as a university and for us as a publishing house a very important commitment. It is about, as the title says, repairing, and in the concrete case of the glossary, in repairing the language of economics. But it is, of course, in repairing the common home and making, opening up ways of a different kind of economy and a different approach to the human development and its integral human dimension. The book is very interesting and enriching reading, and not only because of the very profound information given for each of the entries in this glossary, but also because it allows a lot of discoveries in terms of what has to be included in the repairing of economics when we want to have success on that way. So it's a reading which offers information, but it's also a reading which opens eyes and offers a lot of surprises, unexpected items that you find here, and of course certainly also those that you have to expect when you deal with economy and with a renewed and repairing economy, as is the case here. As a university, we are committed to rethinking economy. We are committed to rethinking the way we go to the common good. We assure the common good. We listen to the cry of the ears and the cry of the poor. We have two specific programs addressing these issues. One is a postdoc program on integral human development, and we launch in this summer a new PhD program in integral ecology, because we see that the way that the authors of this glossary approach economy and the challenges of contemporary world is a way that has to be continued on many levels. So we're inviting young academia, young researchers, young scholars to take part in this endeavor, and we try to offer them a special training in that. What has been my motivation to try to make this book happen was an occasional meeting with Stefano Rozzoni and a surprising talk that we had about issues that we were normally not talking about when we came back from a conference on literary issues. What I found interesting from the very start is that this book, in the end, brings together young people from so different perspectives, from so different regions, with so different interests, making a crucial point in how to look at ecology and economy today. I'm now in the age when I can say that what is also very convincing for me is that we have young voices speaking here and not old academia repeating what has been said for several times. So it's a fresh, new, really promising way, full of hope, full of knowledge, and what we need actually to perform the change that the world needs. So in this sense, I thank all the authors. I thank all the people who participate today in this book launch. I thank my colleague Annabella Antunes, who's in charge of the publishing house. And I hope that through the book we will meet and that we meet actually always and in peace in the common home. Thank you. Stefano, I give the floor to you because you are the master of ceremony, and give the word to the next speakers, please. But you have to unmute you, yes.
Very good. Thanks, Professor Hanenberg. I would like now to give the floor to Annabella. Annabella has been also an essential person in this process. She is representative of the press, UCP Editora, who really gave the concrete materialization of this book. And I know that she puts a lot of effort with her team. So Annabella, please, the floor is yours for a couple of words on this project.
Thank you, Stefano. Thank you, Professor Peter Hanenberg, and thank you all that are listening. My words are essentially for this moment that is very important to us to promote this edition. In the launch of the Portuguese edition, we talked very much about this English edition, so there were many people interested in knowing more about the economic of Francesco and the news that are essential to the future of economics. And as Professor Peter Hanenberg said, the younger people that are producing this book is amazing and it's very inspiring. So it's a very honor and a pleasure to edit this book, and we are very pleased that the Italian version, the original Italian version, could come to Portugal with the Portuguese edition in last summer, and now finally in the English edition. So it's Professor Peter Hanenberg said all the rest. So it's a very pleasure to be here, and thank you, Stefano, for organizing this great moment, and thank you to all.
Obrigado, Annabella, and thank you very much once again for your effort. Now we are entering more in detail the presentation, and before actually talking about the book, because the book is never about the authors only, it's about all the people who really inspired this process, and there are many voices inside, so much wisdom, and one of the people who really make this project possible, because somehow she was there since the very beginning of Economy of Francesco, is Dr. Vandana Shiva. So we are extremely grateful to have her here today to share what we have called an inspirational talk with us. Dr. Vandana Shiva, it's impossible to introduce her in few words. We could stay here long time. She's a physicist, an ecologist, an activist, an editor. She's the author of several books and a very generous human being, if I may, a very committed defender of the environment. So she is the founder of a movement for biodiversity conservation and farmers' rights. She's also the founder of and the director of the Research Foundation for Science, Technology, and Natural Resource Policy. And as I said before, she has been with EOF since the very beginning, offering wonderful talks and being so available to the many people and villages involved in this project. And so her wisdom and inspiration is really in many, many works which are now appearing all over the world. So thank you very much, Dr. Shiva, for accepting our invitation, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Stefano. And for me, it's a joy always to be part of the process of unfolding of the economy of Francesco. I remember we were so looking forward to being at the Assisi meeting. All the bookings were done. And then COVID hit, and we never made it. The process continued, and the Italian publishing house, EMI, asked me to do a book on the economy of care, because that's the only thing that was working for people in that period of lockdown and surveillance. Care was keeping people alive. And within that, I'd put an appendix, very, very much like the economy of Francesco, a glossary of repair of the language of economics. I'd made a dictionary of key economic terms. Of course, the amazing young authors who put the contributions, it's very extended. It's 33 words. And of course, there's no way to go over all of this, but I want to thank you all for the work you've put in. I want to thank the people who took the initiative. And I want to focus on the few words that have been at the center of my own work for the last 5 decades, 6 decades, but also keywords that are in the dictionary that I did. And it was published as a separate book called The Words That Changed the World. Now, every economic term is about our common home. Its original meaning, the very interesting thing is, a lot of meaningful words have their roots in Latin. So, thank you to the Latin community for giving us the vocabulary. And then when I started to look at the roots and the meaning of today, I realized the meaning of today was absolutely the opposite of the etymological roots of that word in Latin. Take something simple like wealth. We today think it's about finance and capital and billionaires. But the root of the word wealth is the state of well-being, of being well, which is the new economy we're trying to create. Not a wealth accumulation, but a well-being for all species in our common home. And the last child in Gaza, the last child in Africa, the last child in India. And I think colonization was, of course, a colonization of our words and our imagination. It was a colonization of our minds. And that's why this glossary is going to play a very big role. When I've been working on the commons ever since I started work on ecology. But more recently, I've realized that the very idea of private property was very much part of colonization. People like Locke laid it out and said, oh, all these primitive people, they don't need so much land, they don't need so much resources, it should belong to us. And we can leave little bits for them. And that's why indigenous people were put in reserves and prisons, and very often exterminated. What was colonialism? Colonialism was really a colonization process, but an economic process of extracting the wealth of the countries that today are the countries of the South and creating poverty. The meanings became extractivist by their very nature. And they shrunk. So take the simple word of currency. As an ecologist and as a physicist, we talk of currency that is what flows. A river and a stream flows. The food web has the flow of nutrition from the soil to the plants, to the animals, to humans. The air flows, the breath flows. And currency applied to domains in life. And then colonialism turned it for the first time. Again, Locke used it for the first time as money. Invest used to mean make beautiful. I remember being with the peasant community when they were fighting a bauxite mine. And suddenly this one peasant got up and started to walk. And I said, why is he leaving the meeting? You know, thinking maybe something's been discussed that he doesn't like. And he mumbled. And of course, I didn't know their language. So I asked the others, what did he say? He was basically going to his field. And he described it as, I'm going to beautify the earth. But farming was not about production of commodity. It was about beautifying the earth. And that's what invest used to mean. The investor ceremony, you dress up in robes. Now it's make money out of money. But the three words that, for me, that are in this dictionary and in this glossary, but are very, very important. One word is, of course, everything related to nature. Now, nature is alive, but colonialism made us think it's dead matter, just raw material. I think about 30 years ago, some of us got together and did a dictionary of development dictionary. The editor was Wolfgang Sachs. Ivan Illich was the main inspiration behind it. And I was asked to do the essay on resources. And I know there's an essay on resources, natural resources. And when I looked at the etymological roots of resource, these days young people hate the word resource because they think of it as raw material to be extracted. But the word resource originally implied life. Its root in the Latin verb surgere evoked the image of a spring that continually rises from the ground. Like a spring, a resource rises again and again, even it has been repeatedly used for sustenance within limits. And the same is for seed. The very word in our language, bija, semi in Latin, the word bija means life that arises on its own forever and ever and ever. It's not a machine. It's not put together from the outside. And yet there has been this, on the one hand, a redefining of nature as dead matter, raw material, now increasingly a financial asset. And they're dreaming of $4,000 trillion by playing on the global casino, by financializing nature. And so even while we in the movement are trying to take the words to repair the language of economics, there are those who are putting it on fast forward, on a very rushed way, so that every meaning that doesn't really mean anything about life. Aristotle talked about economy as oikonomia, the art of living. And he differentiated it from what we call economy today, the art of money making, chromatistics. So if you think of, what do they call the economy? These days, it's just about instruments of money making, and concentrating it in a few hands. Whether it is through extraction or it is through monopoly. And that's where the issue of the commons and the enclosure of the commons becomes so important. Really, till colonialism, all vital resources have been in the commons, the streams, the rivers, the beaches, the forests, the pastures, and definitely biodiversity and the seed. First, land was converted into private property. I know it for my country. East India Company came in, entered, started to rule in 1757. In about 20 years' time, they had defined the soil and land of India as the property of England. And then from the peasants, who were the owners of the land, because no indigenous community owns land. They use land with gratitude. They turn to the land for instruction. But overnight, not only did the farmers and peasants become landless, they had to pay a tax, a royalty that was unbearable. So $45 trillion was transferred from India to England. We used to be 25% of the world economy at that time. And 60 million people were pushed to famine. And of course, my own life's work in Navdanya has been not accepting the enclosures of the commons of life in seed. And there are three reasons, and they're ethical reasons, they're ontological reasons, they're epistemological reasons why this is so wrong. First, the ability to able to shoot a gene into an existing organism or the cells of an organism is not making that organism. The organism is making itself. That's what biological reproduction is about. Shooting a Roundup resistant gene or a Bt toxin gene has been used to take patents on life. But a patent is granted for an invention. But a seed is not an invention. But having defined it as an invention, a handful of companies who actually brought us chemicals are today controlling 60% of the global supply of seed. And this is, as you know, it began in 1995 with WTO and the TRIPS agreement, etc. And that's 60%. And that's why when we started to save seeds, we said first and foremost, protecting creation and her diversity is our duty, our ethical duty. Secondly, for peasants and farmers who have been the breeders, to have their seed is vital for their seed sovereignty and for their food sovereignty. And so we started to create seed banks. But I also worked with my government and my parliament to constantly bring the ethics of the earth as one family, sharing one common home. And I would bring cases of patenting of human beings, John Moore, punishing of farmers after contaminating them. And our parliament realized something's very, very wrong. And so in our patent law, they put in a clause, which to me is a foundational clause of ecological civilization. It says plants, animals, and seeds are not human inventions. Therefore, they cannot be patented. So the enclosures of the commons, from the enclosures of the commons in the time of colonialism to the enclosures of the commons of seed and biodiversity, the enclosures of the commons of health, of energy, of education. These days in the West, the rich Western countries, housing is disappearing from people's hands. Everyone had a house in America. Everyone had a house in Canada, where I did my PhD. People are now homeless. And instead of ensuring that not only does everyone have shelter in our common home, they're actually saying, you know, forget that option, but you have the option of euthanasia. And I think for the economy of Francesco, with this glossary, we can move to the next step of looking at both the distortions of the basic meanings that give us direction of how to communicate with each other, how to build society with each other, how to reclaim our role in a common home and repair our common home. But we also can go to the roots. And that's why this opportunity that has been created and all of those amazing words of property, of innovation. The last thing I want to talk about a little bit, because this is going to be very important, and there is the word technology in 26. Now, you know, I'm trained in science. I did a PhD in quantum theory, but I started an institute on science and technology policy. I worked in a management institute because I couldn't understand why the relationship of science, technology, and society was constantly breaking. And I realized that just like so many other words had been shrunk and got restricted to the privilege, even the word technology, which means that which transforms, you know, it's a tool of transformation. And through this restriction, not only were the technologies of people that actually lead to sustainability. Ecological farming compared to industrial farming. Handmade clothing compared to the fast fashion that is leading to so much waste, including plastic waste in the ocean. But so importantly, the technologies of nature were forgotten. And these days, I've just done a new book on the metabolic disorder of climate change. That if we see the earth as living, then what makes living systems sick is metabolic disorders, just like junk food has made us sick. Junk energy diet is making the planet sick. And increasingly, I'm realizing that one technology that is the solution, and the earth has cooled herself over 4 billion years, is the technology of photosynthesis. That amazing technology in a green leaf of using the free energy of the sunshine, taking the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, turning it into food and into oxygen for us to breathe. And with rich biodiversity and with rich photosynthesis, that is also where the water is conserved and regenerated. So we need to widen our minds again. And in the repair of the earth and the repair of our common home, we have to realize that and it's in the encyclical, so beautifully put, that we have to be partners with our relatives in the earth family, with the animals and the plants and the microbes and the waters and the sunshine and the closure that has brought us to this crisis of collapse can be opened up both in our minds and through our actions. And for me, a very deep inspiration has been Gandhi's reminding us all the time, the earth has enough for everyone's needs, but not for a few people's greed. And exactly the same principle is in Francesco's teaching, that it's only in giving you receive. And those economies of giving are the new circular economies that are being created and can be deepened. All we have to do is not blind ourselves to the richness of a world of which we are a part, and the richness of the potential we have of being in that world in a peaceful way. Thank you, and the very best to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Shiva. This was enriching, as always. Thank you very much. So many inputs and so many materials that we want to go and read, books and other concepts that we want to explore. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
So, as the curator, I had the pleasure to coordinate this work with Plinio Limata, and we are just very thrilled that this special book has been now made available worldwide through this translation in English. And this is a special book because it contains the voices of many people. There are 34 authors who shared their reflections to give life to 33 chapters. But also, as we said before, this book also contains the voices of the many people whose conversation, projects, and confrontations in the context of the economy of Francesco from 2019 and 2022 allowed for the surfacing of some concepts and keywords, which is what the book offers as a strategy to possibly repair the language of economics. So let's go back with our memories to this 1st of May, 2019, when we all were struck by the words of Pope Francis in a special lecture which was addressed to economists, entrepreneurs, and change makers, with the idea to meet one another and eventually enter into a covenant to change today's economics and to give a soul to the economy of tomorrow. Because as Pope Francis said, there is a need to reanimate the economy. So since then, the journey has included more than 3,000 people worldwide, organized in different villages, which became the very round table for starting new reflections. A lot has been created since that moment: friendships, international alliances, exchanges of skills and competences, but also new organizations were born, startups, courses, classes, events, and many other initiatives that aim to translate theory into practice. So in September 2022, Pope Francis expressed really well with this simplicity which distinguishes him that three aspects are essential to enact a change: using your head, using your heart, and using your hands. So he said, you will change the economic world if you use your hands together with your heart and head, the three languages. And he also stated that in the crucial moments of history, those who left a good mark were able to do so because they translated ideas, desires, and values into concrete actions. So they incarnated them. So this glossary aims to achieve this goal, even though it is made primarily by words. So words are seemingly mere abstract elements, but we know very well that words are not only informative, they are performative. So they can make a change, they can inspire actions, transform projects, influence behaviors. Words can also offer directions to follow, since the paradigm shift that EOF evokes in negotiating the challenges of dominant economic models does not require superficial actions or empty slogans. Greenwashing and pinkwashing have become well-known phenomena which make use of words in politics, economics, social events, even important words such as sustainability, gender equality, completely empty. So we don't need these words. We need words which are capable of becoming incarnated. And this glossary reminds us of this. In the principle, it was the word, and it was an incarnated one. And with this in mind, we have picked out 33 of these representative works from the work which has been conducted in the context of EOF since 2019 and until 2022. So among the 33 keywords which compose the book, some of them are words which are already established in economic discourse, but that require a thorough refiguration and understanding compared to, for instance, classic economics theories. Words such as entrepreneurship, profit, capitalisms are being refigured through the ethics offered by Franciscan philosophy, the call for fraternity, the acknowledgement of the importance of creations, a new notion and understanding of poverty. Other words, instead, in the glossary, are not typical of the economic discourse, are not usually found in handbooks, but perhaps they represent notions that need to be integrated into the conversation in light of the ever-new challenges of the present-day world to create new economists for the present and the future. So that's why in the book, we'll find chapters dedicated to agape, vocation, inequalities, happiness. So present and past, tradition and innovation are here combined in these valuable reflections, which also make use of established theoretical frameworks, innovative, valuable resources, the words and studies of some of the most renowned scholars and economists in the present-day world as well. So I've seen architects, for instance, using this book to develop projects. I've seen students using it in high schools, teachers employing it to develop educational activities worldwide. So it's a multivocal work which is generative and which is now available in English for a wider audience, thanks to the valuable support and interest of the Catholic University of Lisbon and UCP Editora, who did a terrific job. And there are so many people that need to be thanked: Annabella, Pereira, Margarita, the translator, Professor Hanenberg, all the many people supporting this project. So this book was first published in Italian, then it was translated into Portuguese, but it contains people from all over the world, from different visions, languages, faiths, backgrounds. So united in diversity and with the shared visions on the footstep of Francesco. So we are lucky to have 3 of them today who will offer a brief overview of their chapters, just to explore further in depth what you should expect from the chapters of this book. So it is therefore with great pleasure that I introduce you to Gloria Imumpaye, Diane Maya Safitri, and Mariana Reis Maria. So I will start with Gloria. So Gloria Imumpaye will introduce her chapter on entrepreneurship. So Gloria has been involved in many things, such as being a PhD student in economics and management at the Sofia University Institute. She is a member of the Economy of Francesco Academy. In her research, she has explored entrepreneurship, in particular, how to support small and medium-sized enterprises. So Gloria, please, a few words on your chapter. We will be very grateful to hear. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today, and thank you, Stefano, for the presentation and also your work, as well as those who made this edition in English possible. And I would also to thank so much Dr. Vandana Shiva for the incredible inputs and the important also contribution in building this, our common home. I will be presenting my contribution on one of the chapters of the book, an important aspect of capitalism, entrepreneurship. As everyone knows, entrepreneurship is crucial in the capitalist system. It contributes to job creation, innovation, technological advancement, and overall prosperity within the economy. Entrepreneurs play a crucial role in driving economic growth by identifying market opportunities, creating innovation solutions, and mobilizing resources to meet the consumer demand. They also need to allocate resources efficiently and generate wealth. But within the increase of inequalities, today, entrepreneurs are asked not only to use their creative capacities to innovate, but also to be alert to the needs of the most vulnerable in the society and the planet, paying particular attention to those excluded by the market. In his latest encyclical, Fratelli Tutti, Pope Francis defined the role of an entrepreneur as a noble vocation oriented towards producing wealth, but to improve the lives of others. Therefore, companies and organizations became protagonists of this change, facing new challenges compared to the past, since the mission is not only about maximizing profit, but also creating a social and environmental impact. The process became even more important, meaning that the companies need to translate their values into managerial practices by creating a good working environment, for example, for their employees, and ensuring sustainability and social responsibility in the production process. This is the case, for example, of some social entrepreneurs that create organizations and businesses with the mission of providing benefit to those in need. One maybe known example is the case of Yunus, Grameen Bank, a bank that promotes microcredit for poor women in Bangladesh. He defined social business as a no-dividend company dedicated to solving human problems. I can say that in brief, the entrepreneurs of Economy of Francis are motivated by an intentional purpose of fighting injustice and inequality. They create businesses that meet the needs of communities that they are part of. And using Pope Francis' words, an entrepreneur is someone who has a vocation to create wealth, respond to the needs of the most vulnerable in society, and address the needs of the planet. With their creative abilities, they innovate with responsibility and sustainability by creating products and services and providing work to those in need in order to contribute to the common good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gloria, for this interesting perspective. And we will now explore the notion of inclusivity as offered in this interesting chapter by Diane Maya Safitri. And Diane is a public policy professional with expertise in social protections, disability empowerment, human rights, and gender mainstreaming, among many other issues that she does in Indonesia. And she has worked in various organizations, including UN agencies, and she's been a researcher, and she's also a very generous, wonderful person. And I am very happy to give the floor to Diane and to call her my friend, just like the many other people of the economy of Francesco. So Diane, please.
Okay. Thank you, Stefano. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm Dian from Indonesia. And first, I'd like to express my gratitude for Economy of Francesco team and UCP Press of Lisbon for inviting me to this book launching. Also, I'm impressed with a very interesting opening speech by Professor Vandana Shiva, especially related to colonialism and extraction and common good, because it feels like very close to home, like what happened here in the past in my country. And I'm happy to represent my country in the Muslim communities, as tomorrow all Muslims worldwide will celebrate Eid, or the celebration after 1 month observing the fasting months. And I think this is relevant to the chapter that I will explain briefly, entitled Inclusivity. Okay, when talking about inclusivity, I still remember vividly the wonderful event of Economy of Francesco in Assisi back in 2022. I'm still deeply moved by the warmth and welcome I received from the Economy of Francesco team members back then during the event. Their warm gesture was not just a gesture of hospitality, but a reflection of the inclusivity that lies at the heart of our shared values. And also, I learned much more the beauty and tradition of Italian cultures, which have inspired, I think, the tolerant perspective of Italian people. And today, I'd like to talk about the imperative of inclusivity, drawing inspiration from Pope Francis' vision outlined in Fratelli Tutti. Inclusion, as Pope Francis teaches us, goes beyond mere equality. It requires us to understand the crucial difference between equity and equality. With equality ensures, while equality ensures that everyone has the same opportunities, equity ensures that everyone gets what they need to thrive. This nuanced understanding is essential as we navigate the complexities of our turbulent world. As we know, within the last 6 months, the world has experienced a lot of incidents, which in my opinion could threaten humanity, peaceful situation, and tolerance among people from different cultures and backgrounds. Systemic discrimination, oppression, modern colonization, and geopolitical conflicts. All these events have laid bare the inequalities that persist in our societies, where marginalized communities bear the brunt of injustice and unequal opportunities. Consider the concept of unity in diversity in Indonesia, for example, where I come from. There are more than 500 ethnicities and 6 official recognized religions living in harmony in my country, together try to develop this country. This principle celebrates the richness of our differences, while inclusivity celebrates the richness of our differences while emphasizing the importance of inclusion. Similarly, the influence of Portuguese culture and language on Indonesian society underscores the interconnectedness of our global community. As we reflect on these realities, we must consider Pope Francis' call to action. The economy of Francesco represents a beacon of hope in our quest for a more just and inclusive world. Rooted in the principles of civil economy, it seeks to redefine our economic systems based on the common good and responsible consumption. But what does inclusivity mean in the context of economy of Francesco? It means recognizing the inherent dignity of every human being, regardless of their background or circumstances. It means creating pathways for those on the margins to fully develop and contribute to society. To achieve this vision, we must cultivate empathy, the ability to put ourselves in another person's shoes, and truly understand their experiences. By imagining ourselves as a refugee, as the poor, or as a person with disability, we begin to grasp the urgency of inclusivity. Moreover, we need a concerted effort, a mission moonshot, I would say, to advance the cause of inclusivity. Just as the world rallied behind the goal of landing a man on the moon, we must unite to realize the vision of a more inclusive and equitable society. This requires clear goals, timelines, and collaboration across sectors and borders. So, in closing, let us remember that inclusivity is not just a moral imperative, but also a strategic response to the challenge of our time. It is through our collective efforts that we can build a world where everyone has the opportunity to flourish. And as we embark on this journey, may we always strive to see the humanity in each other and embrace the diversity that enriches our shared existence. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diane, for this another deep insight. And I will now move to Mariana. Mariana Reis Maria. She's another wonderful voice of the economy of Francesco. She is talking to us from Brazil at the moment, and she is a postdoc now, and she holds a PhD in economics. She has got experience in industrial economics and innovation. She works with renewable energy financing for the low carbon energy transition. She has done so many things, and we are very glad to have you here to listen something about your chapter, which is dedicated to something we anticipated with the talk by Vandana Shiva, which is resource. So Mariana, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Stefano. It's a pleasure to be here. I have no words actually to describe the emotion when I saw Vandana Shiva, Dr. Vandana Shiva together with us here. It's a privilege. It's one of the special moments that Economy of Francesco brings us as a community. And it's very good to know that we are not alone, that we have this strong community together, and we have this inspiring people that we have been seeing since a child, at least my case, I can say. Well, I had the honor and the privilege of writing my chapter about a word that is very important in economics, that is resources, resources. And this word, it has a very special place in economics, because if you open any introduction to economics manual, you will see that economics as a discipline is the allocation of scarce resources. This idea can also be reduced to what the economists also like to describe as the trade of goods and services that are mediated by prices. But if you want to answer the call of Pope Francis, first of all, we have to keep precise this idea. First, because the problem of this conventional definition of resources is based in something that is reductionist, because it considers only the goods and services or the resources that can be mediated by prices, that has a prices in something called market. or something that has an immediate price, you can say, related to its utility. That is another problem of the conventional economics that only consider the value related to utility. And this is a critique that we have to make related to the conventional economy when talking about the word resources, because it cannot give us a complete view of the complexity of our problems, like poverty, inequality, climate change, gender inequality, and many other issues that we have to deal when rethinking the economy. So Pope Francis invite us to go beyond this idea that reduce the human being to a consumer, to the homo economics that sells or buy in something called market, and that has a price. So the resources that are very important for our common home and must be included to rethink the economy are far beyond this idea of resources that can be immediate priced by a market that only considers utility, for example. So as Vandana brilliant said, we have to take into account in this new economy, in this economy with us, so the resources that are not considered by this conventional approach of the economy. And we, as new generation of economists that were called by Pope Francis to rethink the economy, we must include very important resources in this new economy. For example, the ecosystem resources that maintain our life in this earth, caring economy, social resources, cultural resources that are not taken into account because they don't have a price. But in a new economy, they are valuable. They must be valuable in this economy. So Pope Francis also gave us a very important question in 2020 in the advent of an event of the Young Scholars Initiative. That is also another initiative that I make part. He asked us if the origin of the word economy refers to the administration of household goods. One might ask, who today administer the goods of our common home? What bond unites those who administer those assets and those whose assets are administered? This question made me to write this chapter, actually, because I kept thinking about this critique to the conventional definition of resources, but also what do we have to do as young economists to rethink the economy? We are taking care of the common house, of the common good. It's not about only the resources that have a price. So Pope Francis, with this question, made me, and I think it brings also inspiration to the EOF community, that we have to return to the idea of economics as the oikos economics, as the economy of the common home, and to take into account these important resources that are part of something bigger than only the human being, than only the economy, as the conventional economics take into account. So I will not give more spoilers of the chapter, but the idea is reflections on this sense. And I would like to thank you very much again for this opportunity of being here and to write this to be part of this amazing initiative. Thank you very much, Stefano, and all that are part of it.
Thanks to you, Mariana. And I think that the idea of today's meeting and video is to just give some ideas and raise some questions about important issues that people can take time to think and reflect upon with calm. And we are very grateful that the book is also available as an ebook, so it can be immediately, I suppose, download through the UCP Editora webpage or other sources. So it's there, and probably also, I always say that probably it's one of those books that is nice to put next to your bedside table every now and then. Just take a look at something when you also feel inspired, or checking for some inputs from specific words. And before giving the floor to maybe a final word by Professor Hanenberg and Dr. Vandana Shiva, perhaps I would like to conclude with some words which have been used in the Pact for the Economy with Pope Francis, which was signed in our last meeting in Assisi, so September 2022. And it is a symbolic sign of commitment of this generation to embody and enact the promise of giving a new soul to this economy, acting each of us in our daily actions and in more collective works. So these included in the glossary are not just words. This is not just blah, 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 but these are concrete projects where head, hands, and heart join together. So as we said, we believe in this economy. It is not an utopia because we are already building it. So I would be very grateful if Dr. Vandana Shiva would just say greetings, and then I'll give the floor to Peter Hanenberg.
Stefano, what you just mentioned, the whole issue of integral ecology is the integration of the head, the heart, and the hands. You know, basically in all definitions of the dominant fossil fuel-driven economy, the hands were banished. The less hands, the more efficient, the more productive. And I think that's a big redefinition if you have to bring it all together. And definitely the heart, you know, that's why I wrote The Economy of Care, because that is the heart of the matter. And the head, when it's integrated with the hands and the heart, its intelligence is at a higher level because it's getting all the stimulus and feedback and entanglement from all the relationships, the multiple relationships that we are able to generate. And this, I think, will be particularly important in this time, where not only are we being told, forget the hands, forget the heart, now forget your head too, because artificial intelligence will do a better job for it. And this is the time where the economy of St. Francis or Francesco can show the future direction for all of humanity. And thank you for organizing this. And thank you for the young contributors. I was very inspired by listening to you. And happy Eid, Diane, happy Eid.
And so I was inspired as well. And I just wanted to close this session by thanking the speakers once again. I just wanted to show the book at least once so that it can be seen and appreciated if you have not yet had the opportunity to see it. I wanted to thank Mariana for speaking about the resources and for saying something very important, that it is about addressing what has not been considered. Or you even used a very economic term, which has not been taken into account. Speaking about resources in this sense, as you have done, I think will open our notion of what it means and how it can be actually dealt with in a fantastic way. I also wanted to thank Diane for what she has been saying about inclusivity. At a certain moment, you had called it an imperative, and you have given a good reason for this imperative, which is simply the fact that diversity is always asking for including what is different into what is common for all of us. And I think that was a very strong and a very stimulating statement as well as Gloria's pledge for entrepreneurship, but a new entrepreneurship which opens up for different forms of care and attention which are needed for the common home. I want also, of course, thank Stefano very warmly. You have spoken about bringing together in the book the voices, different voices, young voices, new voices, and you have brought them together here today again. And I think that is one of the motions and motors of the economy of Francesco, to bring people together, to let them speak, to let them hear, to let them understand how much is the other one has to say and to tell us. And last but certainly not least, I wanted to thank Dr. Vandana Shiva for her inspiring words. And you have made something very, very clear, which is there is a simple method of getting to the deep understanding by going back to the roots, as you did with the words. It's not about a very complicated theory, but sometimes it is very helpful just to go back to the roots and to do something that you also mentioned in the end of your speech, which is doing this by considering that we are all in need of partners, and in the end that we are all partners, not only among the voices and the people that are on the screen and in the movement of the economy of Francesco, but also in the relation to the world, to the planet, to the animals, to the plants, and to the whole world in which we are living, which is called the common home. So I thank you warmly for your contribution, for your inspiring presence and your inspiring words. And I hope that from this book, from this moment, another inspiration goes out to the world to make it a little bit better. Thank you.
Thank you.